My question's to the Prime Minister. The Morrison government promised aged care workers would be fully vaccinated against COVID by Easter. 4 months on, more than half are still waiting. Today, the New South Wales Minister for Health said he'd never been asked by the Morrison government to put in place an order for mandatory vaccination of aged care workers. Will the Prime Minister take responsibility for his mess, which is leaving vulnerable Australians at risk?
The Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I will ask the Minister for Health and Aged Care to add to this answer. Mr Speaker, the matter of mandatory vaccinations of aged care workers was the subject of a National Cabinet decision attended by the Premier of New South Wales, where all Mr Speaker, with the exception of Victoria and the ACT, who have a different set of arrangements that relate to public health orders relating to aged care, all, including the New South Wales Premier, agreed to put in place those public health orders, and I had received several updates from the Premier of New South Wales about their progress towards achieving that. Now, I can only refer to those matters as they've been discussed between myself as Prime Minister and the Premier of New South Wales. I can't speak to the state of knowledge of the Minister for Health in New South Wales, but I'll ask the Minister for Health and Aged Care to add further to the answer.
The Minister for Health and Aged Care.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. And in relation to aged care staff, at this stage, the latest advice I have is that there have been 158,204 first vaccinations, or 57.5% of the workforce, 102,771, or 37.3% of the workforce, or 260,975 all up. As the Prime Minister said, in relation to the very constructive work we've been able to do with all states and territories, on the 28th of June of 2021, National Cabinet met and agreed to mandate that at least the first dose of a COVID-19 vaccine be administered by mid-September 2021. That work has been carried on the 28th of July and the 4th of August in discussions by the Aged Care Advisory Committee of the Medical Expert Panel, the AHPPC. On the 2nd of August, the AHPPC approved and published the guidelines, which were then published on the 3rd of August, mandatory vaccination of residential aged care workers. That's publicly available. AHPPC has been meeting daily, and this has been raised on multiple occasions on the advice of the Deputy Chief Medical Officer, Professor Michael Kidd, to me today. And on the 10th of August, following the West Australian Public Health Order, further discussion at AHPPC, and indeed the West Australian Chief Health Officer only yesterday published the Residential Aged Care Facility Worker Access Directions. It's also been raised in Health Ministers' meetings as a matter, and what we're seeing is all states and territories making very good progress, not just with the vaccinations, but also with the orders. We thank Western Australia for their work. We thank all the states and territories for their cooperation.